in a pretty desperate place when I first found Fulshear. My daughter Callie is adopted. We brought her home at 10 and a half months, but she had not been fed and she had not been held. And so she was very developmentally delayed when we got her. And I thought, well, with enough therapy and enough love, we could, overcome this. And for a while, we it looked good. And then in middle school, she started to struggle. In high school, she struggled even more. And by the Christmas before she was fortunate enough to come to Fulshear, we were on a downward spiral. We were desperate. She was in a really dark place, wouldn't come out of her room, wouldn't really communicate with us. We were struggling with depression and anxiety and what I would come to know later as attachment disorder. And so I was so desperate that I Googled. I literally went to the internet and I Googled depression and anxiety, and I think horses, and Fulshear pops up on my Google search, and I was super impressed by what I saw, but I was also my husband actually was so skeptical because, he said anything can look good on the internet. So we had our therapist, who Callie was seeing, literally check into it and interview folks there. And it was determined that it would be a good place for Callie. And fast forward, it has been a great experience for Callie. Not always easy. Not always what I would consider pleasant or it's not a it's not a linear, that's what I'm trying to say. It's not a linear upward movement. But she was at Fulshear for, I think it was 11 and a half months, almost just short of a year. Just short of a year. And she spent, I can't remember, 3-4 months at the ranch and the rest of the time in the apartments. And when we first dropped her off, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I have no idea. I don't know any of these people. What am I doing? It was really frightening at first, but very soon after, I realized it was a safe place for her and a place where she would be cared for and challenged and held accountable and loved all at the same time. That process for us as parents was it was a mixed bag of initially fear and anxiety. Were we doing the right thing? How could we send our kid away to a place that we didn't know people? And then, kind of progress to a place where I was, just a few weeks in going, gosh, do they really get her? Because I don't see anything happening. And yet, so when I asked, do you really get her? Do you understand this child can go underneath the radar and pretend a lot to be, with the program and not at all. And I remember our therapist going, oh, don't you worry. I've got her number. We'll take care of her here. And they did. And I think, taking care of her meant both coming up underneath her and showing her that she was bigger and better than what she could possibly imagine that she was. um, that some of those times were difficult. She resisted a lot, and uh, and I love the fact that we were always assured that she was in the place that she needed to be, and that she was moving forward even though we couldn't see it. And I think probably one of the things that I learned, well, I learned so many things. It was as much a learning situation for my husband and I and the rest of our family as it was for Callie. We had to learn how to parent an adult child, which, even though she was probably she and her brother are almost exactly the same age, but even though she was the youngest of four, I thought I knew how to do this, how to parent an adult, because I had two other adults besides her, but clearly I did not. At least not her version of parenting an adult. And so I got to learn as much about what that meant and what that triggered in me as she got to learn what was triggering her, and what that meant for her. And we, before she came to Fulshear, we'd probably not had a healthy adult conversation. We hadn't probably had a healthy conversation, period, for I don't know how many years, 5 or 6 maybe. And now we have those adult conversations. They aren't always as deep and intimate as I'd like them to be, but we have them. And what I know about Callie is she has a vocabulary to talk about what's going on inside of her that she never had before Fulshear. She has not only the vocabulary to talk about it, but she knows what she needs to do to care for herself. Little side note, we had a Zoom call for Thanksgiving, and one of the things she talked about was how she had learned how important self-care was for her this past year. And that's like huge. She had no idea what self-care even meant before she came to Fulshear. So, and she's the one sometimes in our little family meetings who's calling people out and calling people in and telling them, that they're not being authentic, and then they're not really telling us what's really going on with them. I mean, I love it. She's taking not only the initiative for herself, but leadership within the family sometimes. And other times, we still struggle, just like normal parents and 22-year-olds. But I am eternally grateful for the guidance, the education, the support, the constant holding us all accountable to being better than we thought we could be as family members, as parents, as human beings. And it's a good place for learning those things about yourself.